hold on while I do that. I would love to have you here with me while we talk about it. But we're going to be talking about trauma bonds. What is a trauma bond? How do you know that you have a trauma bond? Um, are you even aware that it's going on? What kind of things should we be watching for that are signs that we're in a trauma bond? I know that for me, I had no idea that I was in a trauma bond. It was I had no idea. I'd be curious how many of you who are joining me right now knew that you were trauma bonded. Did you have any awareness that that was happening? I would be fascinated to see if you would let me know in the comments if this was something that you were experiencing. And thank you so much for the likes. I see them pouring in. I really appreciate it. And I love that you guys are joining me. I'm Dr. Kerry McAvoy. I'm a, um, I'm a retired psychologist these days who primarily does education. So I'm super excited that you're here and that we're talking about trauma bonds and what are they, how do they happen. And right now I'm trying to see if I'm live on Facebook, and I have no idea if I'm live on Facebook. I hope that I am, but I can't tell that I am or not. Um, it these this features are so, yeah. It says it's I don't know if I am or not. Oh, I guess I am. It says that I am. So hopefully, yeah, okay, I am. Yay, I can take a deep breath. So yeah, I did not know I was in a trauma bond. I It was only when I got out of the relationship and I came across Patrick Carnes' book called Betrayal Bonds. That's what he called them. And he was the one who actually formulated the idea of trauma bonds that it that I understood that I had had one. And that I had probably that I understood that I actually have had one more than one, that I've had them with probably my first husband, my late husband, and I definitely know I had one with my parents. That I had this anxiousness, this fear of displeasing them. The best way I ever heard explained was it's a connection based on fear rather than based on love. That you do things out of an anxiousness rather than out of a sense of confidence and freedom and commitment. It's this really sense of this wanting to keep the connection alive, but feeling like it's that you're always in jeopardy, that rejection and abandonment is being hung over you as a constant threat. That's how it felt to me. Like when I had a sense of me not being around that person and was worried about what they might think or feel, I really felt like if I displeased them, there was a whole lot that was going to be in jeopardy. And I then lived in terror of trying to keep this person happy. And anybody who knows who's been in a narcissistically abusive relationship, you're in a relationship with somebody who's toxic, whether it's narcissism or maybe another cluster B, maybe it's psychopathic or sociopathic, something like that. You know that these individuals are highly antagonistic, that they're constantly analyzing you, that you're always under this criticism. So lately, I want to talk about this because lately I've been doing this training with Dr. Ramani. She has this certification for narcissistic abuse. And I'm nearly halfway through it, and I have to say it is rich. And I can't wait when she starts to put out identification of those who are certified versus those who are not certified. For those of you who know, who are seeking help with a coach or whatever, that you know that you have somebody who knows what they're doing and they know a lot about it. It's 44 hours of training, and I'm probably nearing 20 hours in. And Laura, thank you so much for your comment about my book. I'm assuming, Laura, are you talking about Love You More, or are you talking about Surviving Your Thriving, or First Steps to Leaving a Narcissist? I have three books in this genre now. The first I wrote in 2000, and I actually published, I think, in 2022, and that's Love You More. And this is a story that tells you actually what happened. So if you like a novel, I wrote it like a novel. If you like a novel that's sort of true crime-esque feeling, and you want to sort of like enter into what my world was like, what was I doing before it happened, you get a taste of the my loss. You get a taste that I am a new widow and that I'm trying to process that my whole life has changed. And then you kind of follow the ride of me meeting my narcissistic sociopath, and you get to see what happens. I'm very blunt, very honest, very authentic about what actually happens in that relationship. It was hard to write, let me tell you that. I felt a lot of shame, a lot of embarrassment. There's things that I considered not sharing with you all, But I felt, you know what? I have to let you know this because these are facets of an abusive relationship. Like what happens in the bedroom is a facet of what goes on in the relationship. In fact, I had some friends of mine, I grew up in a really religious community, and they said that wasn't necessary. And I thought, no, you don't understand. It is necessary because narcissistic abuse affects all arenas of your life, and it affects even intimacy. And we need to know what it looks like, what intimacy looks like in these relationships. So I include all of it. And then you also take the hard ride with me of my trauma bond. I mean, I'm sure if you read the book, of those of you who have read the book, probably wanted to scream at me, why do you leave? You need to leave. Why? There's your opening, leave. And I don't leave. And that's because I was very trauma bonded. And I know for anyone who's never experienced a trauma bond, it's really hard to understand why you stay, the confusion that you feel. In fact, that's part of the training with Dr. Ramani right now is talking about the complexity. And I had this flash. I'm going to create this video. I haven't created it yet, but this is what trying to leave feels like. This is what the outside doesn't understand about what it's like when you're in one of these relationships. So you get into a narcissistic relationship and it feels like you immediately start carrying a 10-pound weight. The relationship is 10-pound weight. And then your gender role, whatever your role is, whether you're a man or a woman, you have different expectations. So society throws another weight on top of it. So now you're carrying 20, 30 pounds of weight. And then the abuse starts up, all the reactive abuse. Well, actually, you're doing the reactive abuse, all the ambient abuse, all the coercive control, all the criticism, all the gaslighting, all the deception. That starts up. That throws another 30-pound weight on top of you. And you're walking around carrying all these weights and you barely can move. And now you're trying to function. Maybe you have a job and you're taking care of kids. You're taking care of the house. There's another weight that goes on top of you. Now you're carrying 40, 50, 60 pounds, 70 pounds of weight, extra weight. And people then yell at you and say, you should leave. Why are you staying? Get out. And you look at that weight of leaving and it's another 40, 50-pound weight. And you're already carrying 60, 70 pounds of extra weight. And they're asking you to pick up another 50, 60 pounds. You can't do it. You feel like I'm just drowning. I'm literally like I'm being crushed by all what's happening to me. The expectations in the relationship, the expectations that life has for me, the expectations I'm putting on me, the expectations now the narcissist is putting on me, that then all the abuse is putting on me. And then I'm supposed to somehow find a way to leave, which is more weight. So it's hard. It's something I know that those who've not ever experienced this personally struggle to understand from the outside because they say, if it's really that bad, you should just get out. It should be, respect yourself, get out. But it is not that simple. So thank you so much for those who are commenting on Love You More and that you read it and that you really appreciate it and that you found it helpful, that you could identify what I was going through. I wrote it partly for my own voice. It was my yell back into the world. This happened to me. This should not have happened to me. But I also knew that you all would identify because it's happening to you. I felt like I was the only one that it was occurring to. I had no idea this was happening around me, that this was happening to all of you. I had no idea. I felt so isolated. So I really wanted you to know that you're not alone, that you don't need to feel the shame or the embarrassment. You don't need to feel ostracized. I hope you're not isolated. I wanted you to know that you're not alone. So that's why I wrote Love You More. It took me 3 years to publish it from start to finish. It had 9 edits. I hired a professional editor, went through it twice for me. I had written before. I was actually a quite successful blogger, made money blogging. So writing is not this was not my first effort at writing, but I actually have a manuscript I've not finished. It's about losing my late husband, about his cancer and becoming a widow, but I'm not for sure I'll ever release that. That may be something that's a little too personal. Believe it or not, you're like, that's personal, Kerry. Love You More is very personal, but interestingly enough, Love You, the other one, which at first I've called it The Long Road Home, because finding my first husband felt like I found home. But it's a very difficult story, very complex story, and I don't know if I'll ever share it. But for those of you then who have read Love You More, Maybe you're in a toxic relationship and you're struggling to get out. This is the book for you. It's a workbook. It's called, oh, thank you so much for that gift. It's called First Steps to Leaving a Narcissist. It is actually takes you through the decision, that why you're feeling confused, what's happening that's causing the confusion, and it helps you sort of step by step make sense of it in a hearable, uh, you know, practical way so that you get there yourself. You make your own decision what you're going to do. So that's the next book. And then if you're out, and I'm so excited about this, I don't mean to take all this time talking about books, but I'm leading up to something I can't wait to tell you all about. Then the next one is Surviving to Thriving. We have a new cover coming for this one, so I'm excited about that. It's really pretty. It's got some flowers on it. But Surviving to Thriving is the 6 obstacles that survivors encounter when they're trying to heal. Again, it's a workbook, and I wrote it with Lisa Sunny. So her and I step you through what gets in the way, like really falling in love with this person's potential and struggling with why can't they live up to their potential, dealing with the guilt that you have about making the decision that you made, struggling with even was it the right decision, the cognitive dissonance that you're battling with, all those types of things that we initially hit. Because here's the thing, I thought when I got out that I would be great, that everything would be fine and I would be moving on and, you know, I should feel better. I'm out of this abusive relationship. And I found that I stalled. And if it wasn't for the group therapy that I was in, that I stalled. So surviving to thriving helps you move through that stall so that you can have a roadmap. That's why we call it a 6-step blueprint. It gives you a roadmap of what to do next. Okay, so where is that taking me? And I'll get back to trauma bonds, which I know I've kind of diverted off of. Lisa Sunny and I are going to be launching a group coaching program the end of March. And then we're offering a free webinar called Feeling Stuck, because that's what often happens. You get out of these toxic relationships and you feel stuck. You'd find yourself not healing like you thought that you would. You're still obsessing. You're having a lot of ruminations. You're struggling with triggers. So, and I'm realizing I don't have that link in my bio. So as soon as I get done with this live, I will immediately jump over and put that link in my bio, but it's free. It's free March 7th at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. So if you'd like to spend 45 minutes with Lisa and I talking about why you're stuck, what sticks us, why we get stuck after a toxic relationship, why our healing doesn't just naturally occur, I'd love to have you join us about that. And then you'll hear more about the upcoming group therapy. It's group coaching called Healing Strong. And it starts the end of March. It's going to be open enrollment. So as soon as one group starts up, we'll have another group join shortly after that. And it's going to be just for 8 to 10 people, very small group. And we're going to be walking through 10 things that causes us to get stuck. So if you feel like, wow, I really need the extra care, I need the support of a community, I need the support of a trained professionals to help me move through this, then that's the group for you. So trauma bonds. I heard something fascinating about trauma bonds that I just blew my mind. And when I heard it, like, yes, this really makes sense. This is something that trips people up when they hear that people get indoctrinated. Like, you're an adult. How could someone fool you into believing their reality? Why would you give up your opinions, your feelings, your truth for the truth of somebody else? That's, people like, they just find that mystifying. So when I heard this, it's like, oh, this is why this happens. So trauma bonds, I don't know if you know that, have 7 different stages. And even that doesn't really tell us a whole lot. And I can even list most of them. I can't list all of them, but I can list most of them. Starts out with love bombing, and then you start to have there's some gaslighting that happens, and you experience the criticism, and then before you know it, you're asked, there's dependency, then there's addiction, and then finally there's like submission. Okay, I know I missed a few, but generally that's the course of trauma bonding. But here's the thing about trauma bonding. And we all know in the love bomb, we don't really meet the true person. For those of you who are not in this community, maybe you don't know that the person that you meet in that initial meeting is who they believe you want to meet, not who they actually are, because they're making a sale. In fact, I have a video coming out for a horizontal video. I'll post it both on TikTok and YouTube about how they're making a sale of themselves that they know that is a flawed sale. It's like a sleazy salesman trying to convince you. You guys know about the Pintos in the 1970s? There was a car in the 1970s. It was really this weird, ugly looking car, and it had an error in the gas engine. So if you struck the back of the car, it was at risk of blowing up, of turning into like this firebomb. People were getting killed driving Pintos and getting rear-ended. So it's like you're a sleazy salesman. This is what narcissists and other toxic people are like. They know they're flawed. They know there's something like not quite right about them. They're hiding that shame, and they want you to go ahead and choose them, but they don't respect you for choosing them. So the minute the sale is made, minute the commitment is made, that flip that you experienced, like maybe it was for you on the honeymoon, maybe for you, some of you, the rest of you might have been when you moved in with them, maybe you moved across the country and got into a new job with them, maybe you got pregnant, but there was some moment. Somebody said more people have died in Teslas. Well, I don't know that, but you know what I mean. You know my point. There was some moment that when you made that decision, that you bought what was being sold, the lemon that was being sold, there's a flip that switched, because they then feel contempt. Like, ha ha, sucker, I got you. You know, they feel that. And so now they don't respect you. So you move immediately from the idealization that was happening in the convincing you to accept them, to the devaluation once you make the sale. But the trauma bonding starts even before you meet them. I know it did for me. It starts from the first initial contact you have with the person. And initially, think of it like this. Think of every like wonderful thing they do for you in the beginning, you know, that perfect person that you meet. There's like 10 pieces of perfection, and then they'll throw in one slight negative, one slight criticism that's not good. But you blow it off because you know nobody's perfect. So you think, well, they're tired, or maybe they're hungry, or you know, you think of something that explains the why they did this. And so you don't see it as, oh, thank you so much, Taffy loves coffee. I really, really appreciate that. You don't see it as, oh, this is problematic. This person's bad, because it's like you got 10 good things and you got one bad thing. And then time starts to move on, and then it becomes every 8-1. And then a little later, it starts to be 5-1. And then it starts to be 3-1. And then finally, when you're trauma bonded, it goes to 1-1. And you know that how that feels. And then when you're in the relationship, it goes to like -5-1 positive. It reverses, it flips. But in the beginning, it's a slow indoctrination. So you don't realize that you're incrementally giving in, sacrificing, tolerating devaluation, tolerating criticism, that you're being gaslit, that they're lying to you. You don't recognize it because it's this slow incremental experience that you're finding other ways to explain or make sense of it. And as this is happening, you also don't realize that you're relinquishing yourself to this person, that these buy-ins, the agreement with the gaslighting, the not checking up on something that doesn't quite feel right, that is actually a deception. You don't realize that that is making you submerge who you are, how you see reality, how you experienced yourself, your feelings. You don't realize that you're submerging yourself into this other person's reality, into this other person's definition of a relationship, and that you're losing yourself in that process. So that's why it so happens so subtly. That's why you get there and you don't know that you've been trauma bonded. I had no clue that I had been trauma bonded. Probably the first really big tip off to me that I had, and I talk about it in the book Love You More. Again, for those of you who are asked me about this, Love You More is my story. It's actually, this book once was 135,000 words. To give you an idea, this is 80,000 words. So it was nearly like a third longer. This is an average size of a book. So it's a big story, and I couldn't include every story in it. But I do share this story in Love You More. He says he has a sex addiction. He's a serial cheater. Does he have a sex addiction? Probably, but that's actually not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is he's a narcissist. But we're at a clinic, an intensive outpatient treatment center, for an evaluation to kind of figure out what to do next, because we're in crisis. I just discovered that he's a serial cheater, and we're married, and we're moving to Mexico, and I'm just in a big crisis. And the counselor who meets me makes this grave therapeutic error. Now, as a former psychologist who's treated people for over 20 years, I knew he was making an error. I mean, I'd done therapy. I made errors myself. So I recognized that he was making a gaffe, but I also knew, I'm the client. I'm not the therapist in the room. And I'm needy. Remember, I've been massively betrayed, so I'm barely on my feet. And but this is what he says to me at the end that told me that I was trauma bonded. But I couldn't. He didn't say you're trauma bonded. The therapist was male, and nobody addressed my trauma bond. They let me walk out as if I wasn't, that's the error, by the way. The error was under diminishing the degree I no longer had the autonomy, the free agency to make my best decisions. I couldn't do that. And thank you so much for your gift. And Positive Talk Space, I've been hearing a lot from you lately. You tag me a lot. You'll have to let me know what all the tagging is about. I've been intrigued. So this is what the counselor said to me. He said, if your partner, if your husband makes another error, like he cheats on you again, are you prepared to leave? And I thought in my head, no, I can't leave. And then the therapist then says to me, you're handsome, which I'm thinking, who are you to say that? It feels really creepy coming from a man. But you're a good-looking woman who's young, who's well-educated, who has a lot of life in front of her, because this is like 8 years ago, which is still true today, but it was 8 years ago. He said, you can go out and start over again. And I'm thinking, I don't know if I can start over again. I feel like my whole life got decimated with my late husband's death, and I really love this person. And I'm afraid to lose this relationship. And there it was. There was the trauma bond. I'm afraid to lose this relationship. I've lost myself so much that losing this relationship feels like I've lost me. There's what a trauma bond feels like. Losing the relationship feels like you've lost you. And I didn't feel the freedom to leave. So him saying all of that, like, dude, you don't get it. I have so much writing on this psychologically. I have so much writing on this in a practical sense. I'm moving to another country. I don't speak the language that he speaks. He speaks the language. I don't. We're starting a business. I need him. And then on top of it, my whole life has been wiped out by my being widowed. And I'm trying to rebuild a life with this new person. And I want this person to want a life with me. So I didn't see it as like possible. So I walked out thinking, I'm in trouble. Because he's telling me I need to hold a boundary that probably I'm going to have to immediately hold, because probably knowing people, because I've counseled them 20 years, knowing this person is going to do this again. I mean, even if it was just a sex addiction, let's be honest, they don't stop overnight. I mean, come on, let's be realistic. This is a big problem. So I already knew, addictions, there's relapses happen all the time. Was I prepared with the relapse to walk out? No, I was not prepared to do that. And I knew I lied. I knew I lied in that therapy appointment. I also knew he didn't understand what position I was in. Now as a person who is well trained in all of this, who knows so much now more about narcissistic abuse, I understand what was happening to me. And I also understood that he made the error. I wasn't making the error. He failed to understand my position, understand to see me as a client. I was a client in the room and he wasn't seeing me as the client. And that I needed help, that this clinic needed to send me to help, not just focus on my ex as being problematic, but that to see me as in crisis. So that's the first thing I'd really like you all to take away from this discussion about trauma bonds is it's serious. You're needing help. Your fears are understandable. It's been likened to brainwashed. You've been brainwashed. Think of a cult. If you got pulled into a big cult and you were in it and your whole life was like based on that cult, they defined where you lived, they defined when you eat, they defined what time you got to get up and when you got to go to bed, they defined the structure of your day, they defined everything in a cult. That's what happens. It's the same process. I've heard other big names in this arena who have done a lot of research and they say cults and a narcissistic relationship, same thing. Just the difference is the number of people. That basically, a narcissistic relationship is a cult of two people or a cult of a family. And so I was indoctrinated. And he defined it to the point that I think the other thing that people don't understand is he set the decision of when we went to bed. I may say I'm tired. I may lay down beside him and turn off my light, but you know what he would do? He'd keep his light on, keep the TV running and watching TV in the room while I'm trying to sleep. So how well do you sleep with the TV on at hearable levels? It's not like he put headphones on. He didn't put headphones on. He like was interrupting my sleep. And you know the other thing he did, because he didn't need the same amount of sleep that I did. Now maybe he was lying. I don't know. Maybe he was just doing this to really mess with me. But we would have an appointment at 9 a.m. and he knew I never wanted 9 a.m. appointments. And if anybody knows me and works around me, you know I start my day about 10 or 11 because I'm a night owl. So he would start it at 9, but he would set the alarm for 6 a.m. and he would let it go off over and over and over. And then he'd wake up and start talking to me. So he's kept the TV on till 2, 3 o'clock at night. And then he's setting the alarm for 6 a.m. every morning, disrupting our sleep. So, you know, I know some of you end up experiencing arguments, that you'll have a partner who'll start a big fight just as you're heading to bed. Or maybe you also have a partner who comes home behind you and then they'll like flip on the lights and turn on the doors and slam it and talk to people, let the dog out. They do all of this stuff as if you sleeping didn't matter. Now, to give you an example of what it was like with my late husband knew sleep was super important to me. So he always went to work early before me, like several hours. He would like sneak out of bed. He would like hit that alarm before it even went off. And then he would like sleep out of bed and he'd keep the lights dark. He would never sit on the bed. He would take all his clothes into the bathroom, which was a ways away, so that I didn't have to hear any of that, him changing his clothes. And then he would sneak back through so quietly, I often didn't even know he left the room to head out to work. That's what healthy relationships look like. What my ex would do, he would pull up out of the bed, make it jerk, put his shoes on. He would flip the lights on. He would be noisy. Anything he could do to disrupt my sleep. And then the next thing he would do is he would then race us through the day and we wouldn't stop for lunch. No breakfast, no lunch. And finally, about 4 or 5 o'clock at night or in the afternoon, I was shaking hungry, like barely can think. He would finally allow us to slow down enough to eat. So my life was literally like controlled. So here's the funny part. He never once hit me, although he broke things around me, but he never once hit me. He never once called me a name, not one single bad name. And he never raised his voice, not once. But he would do all this like intimidation, threat to leaving. He would challenge me. He would run me down. He would make sure to do dog whistling to make me feel really crappy. He would compare me to other people. It was awful. And it was all coercive control, all the subtle ambient abuse. It's like breathing carbon monoxide. You think from the outside, people thought we had a fantastic relationship. They even marveled at how much I loved him, not knowing that it was a trauma bond they were seeing. They would think, oh, I wish I had a wife as adoring as your wife was of you, not realizing it was fear, not adoration. But all of this, we look like a great couple, but I was so terrorized by him that at times I couldn't speak. I couldn't even speak. I definitely had a hard time standing up for myself. Very, very hard. So yeah, how do you break it? Okay, so let's jump into that and then we'll start taking your questions. I know a lot of you have been asking questions of me and I know, may I ask a question? Absolutely. So let me say a few words and then Two Boys Mom, we can start talking. And I know you on Facebook and YouTube have been asking me questions too. Breaking it is hard, but let me give you a couple tips. Whether you're in the relationship or outside the relationship, you have to begin to take care of you. And that is the hardest thing that you're going to do. You have to start standing up for you in small ways. In the beginning, it's going to be super small ways because your voice has been nearly silenced. It's like a whisper. You hardly hear yourself. So what may that look like? It may look like you take a call in another room and you no longer let them listen in. Maybe it's you allow yourself to read a book. Or maybe when they're really disruptive, you go into another bedroom. But you start to find these small ways in which you say to yourself, I see me, I matter, I'm going to start like respecting me. Like one of the things that I started doing that helped, believe it or not, was I always have liked exercise. And I know you look at me like, Kerry, you're overweight, but exercise has always been an important part of my life. And so what I started doing is I started going up to the gym, even though I knew that when I was gone to the gym, he probably was cheating. He probably was texting other women. I knew I was risking lack of safety in the relationship by doing that. But I thought, you know what? I need to take care of my health. So I started to go to the gym and work out. I saw a therapist. That was another thing I did for myself. I would go out and see friends and have a cup of coffee with them or have a cup of tea. So I would do things even though I knew because my tendency was to want to stay with him 24/7 so I could manage him, so I could control what he's doing, so I knew what he was up to because this guy, I mean, if he could get away with it, he was going to do it. And for him, monogamy didn't exist. It really didn't. It applied to me, but it didn't apply to him. So I knew that, and I knew the only way for me to keep safe, intimately wise, was to watch him, treat him like he was a 3-year-old child, actually, when it came to intimacy. But I started to let go of some of that and start to take care of myself, and that's how we start to break the trauma bond. Is we see ourselves. We see ourselves. Now I know it's scary because they don't like it. In fact, when I started dieting near the end of the relationship and losing weight, and he then started sabotaging it, like bringing home my favorite snacks, talking about how my legs were getting thinner. And I could tell it was making him anxious because he liked me heavy. So it made him know that I couldn't be cheating, or at least he assumed so. No, I didn't cheat on him, but I think he just felt safer having me not he saw me like competition or something, I guess. I don't know. But I thank you so much, you guys. You're giving me so many gifts today. I'm really surprised and pleased and touched. But yeah, he started. But I didn't let that stop me. I just really like watched my diet and was really careful about all of that and took care of me. So that's the first step, is that you have to start to find these little small ways of acknowledging yourself. And I really there's another big one. If you're in the relationship, I really want to encourage you to not be isolated. That's another thing I started to do. I joined groups. I have a group. I don't know if you guys know that. It's Toxic Free Relationship Community and Toxic Free Relationship Club. I'm about ready to introduce a new tier, which allows you one-on-one contact with me, like one-on-one coaching. So the lowest level is $7.99 a month, and you get 24/7 chat, and you get direct access, chat access to me. And then the higher level, which is quite a big jump because it includes 4 hours of group coaching every month and a book club with me every month. And that is $75 a month. And I'm soon going to add another level, which includes 1 hour a month of direct contact with me for $300. So I know you're like, well, I can't afford any of that. I don't even know. I mean, but talk to me. If you're in that situation and you really want the support, and you want the support with somebody who's not only been a counselor, a therapist in the past, but also has been a survivor who understands. The group is amazing. It's the most amazing group I've ever had. In fact, I've got a few people who are annual subscribers, and they both said they're renewing, that they said they can't imagine not having this be a part of their life. So if you feel like, hey, I really need, the prices again at the community level is $7.99, so $7 and $8, roughly $8. The 4 hours of group coaching, we do it every month. Every week we have 1 hour group coaching, and it occurs right after this. So we're meeting right as I get off of this. We'll be meeting. That's $75. It also includes a 1 to 2 hours of a book club as a group. It also includes direct access to me, and it includes my course, my book. I mean, I throw in a whole host of stuff, like loads, all my webinars, all free. It's all free to my members. And then at the highest level that I haven't rolled out yet will be $300. That's 1 hour of coaching with me and all the benefits that I already listed out. So all the group coaching, all the book club, all of that. Yes, I do have a website, Kerry McAvoy, PhD. It does describe it. It's called Toxic Free Relationship Club. Oh, Janine, there's one of my group members. So I love the group. Guys, that group to me, I mean, it's become an important part of me, to me too. Not, they say it's amazing. I say they're amazing, and I really love spending time with them. So that's another way. Break your isolation. But if you can't afford that, I understand. There are free groups online. So yeah, I found groups for those who are sex addicts, partners of sex addicts. I know some of my friends, like Lisa Sunny, as well as Roller Coaster Than Love, also has free groups that you can join that are critical. And then the other thing is we're hosting retreats. We have the first one coming up in February. We're about ready to announce there is one for men in September in Orlando, Florida for 3 days. There is another one for women in October, 3 days in Orlando, Florida. The women's one I'm super excited about. Not that I'm excited about that I'm excited about the men's as well. But the women's, we're going to do equine therapy. We already have an arrangement with an equestrian center where we're going to be doing some work on confidence, self-confidence with yourself by working with horses. No, you won't be riding the horses, but I've done it and it is freaking amazing. So I'm super excited about both of those. We haven't formally started the sign up yet, but keep an eye on it. The men's is called Unleash Your Potential, and it will include some fun things like possibly golf. And then for the women, it's called Strong and Unstoppable, and it's in October. For the men, is in September. So yeah, but break your isolation. That's another critical part. Break your isolation. Those are two things you can do immediately. The thing that you can do after you get out is, because you're still trauma bonded. I hate to tell you that. Just because you leave the relationship doesn't mean the trauma bond's gone. It took me months to break my trauma bond. And I'll tell you, a sign that you're still trauma bonded is that you find yourself wanting to check up on them. Like, what are they doing? How happy are they? And you start to like peek at their socials, or you have contact with them. You text them, or you start yourself just thinking about them. You're ruminating about them all the time. That's still a trauma bond. So it takes work to break this. It takes conscious effort. You have to begin to rebuild your life, start to fill it with new things. For me, I just got asked this question on my podcast. It's going to come out on February 26th. I'm losing Tara. Tara is saying goodbye, but Lisa Sunny is stepping in, as well as Roller Coaster of Love. Ro is stepping in on my podcast, Breaking Free from Narcissistic Abuse, which, by the way, I heard we broke 100 today again on Apple Mental Health in the United States. So yeah, I mean, it's been ranking as out. Lisa said, out of how many podcasts in mental health? 35,000 podcasts. This podcast is ranked 100th out of 35,000 podcasts. So I'm super, super excited. But so Tara asked me this really powerful question. And the question was, how has being in that relationship changed you? Well, I died. The me that I was before I met him no longer exists. I'm not her anymore. There's pieces of her I miss. There's some pieces of her I don't miss. But I've become someone new. I'm learning to become more confident, speak my mind, become less concerned about the other people's feelings. I still always care. I'll still always be invested, but not so controlled. So those are the things that are changed. All right. So I know I talked a super long time. Let's talk about you all. So what kind of questions do you have? Oh, Maria, thank you so much. I just appreciate you so much, Maria. Yeah, Maria is on my subscribers list. Did you guys know I have a newsletter? I now have a free part and a paid part. And if you want to get on the newsletter, actually, anytime you engage with me, so if you take one of my quizzes, you're on the newsletter. If you just even say to me, hey, add me to the newsletter, I'll add you. But there's links everywhere. So if you look for the links, you'll find them. But the free part, I give you some information about the topic. And then the paid part includes a audio, also resources. Usually I give you an exercise, something practical to try. And then I give you the transcript to the podcast. So please check that out if you are looking for more weekly support. I'd love to see you that way. And Maria, thank you so much. Because some of you write me back, and I love it. Maria is one of them that writes me back. And I answer, by the way. If you write me, I answer you. Because I appreciate the time that you took to even write me. Yeah, so what kind of questions do you guys have for me? Yes, I have a website. It's kerrymcavoyphd.com. And Marielle says, I always come here and I feel, when I hope it comes back, I feel empty. It does come back, Marielle. It does come back. Yeah, Vadi, I agree. Pets can play a really important role. I've debated getting a dog. I'm allergic to them, so I know it would complicate my life, but I do. Yeah, I would love to get a dog that would really be special. I travel a lot. That's my other problem. I don't think my son would really like me. Like, hey, you had a dog to take care of. Every time I'm out of town, you got to take care of the dog. But they are precious. I agree. So what kind of questions do you guys have for me today? Family Court Corner is an awesome support for those of you who are struggling with post-separation abuse, particularly if there's children involved. I highly recommend working with, I think her name is Angela. She's very, very useful that way. Yeah, it's really hard. I have a feeling I'm just jumping into this conversation to boy's mom, but I have a suspicion that what you're struggling with, and thank you so much, Nina. I really appreciate that. I have a feeling that you're struggling with the fact that you have an abusive ex who then is involving the children and the boundaries are a mess, is my suspicion. I haven't read your comments. I'm just making a hunch. But maybe if you'd like to share more about it, I'd be happy to talk about it. Oh, you know somebody who's allergic to dogs, so she got a bunny. You know, I used to raise bunnies. I spin wool and fiber. Yes, I have. I used to have a spinning wheel, like the one that looks like Snow White. I used to own one of those. I love doing it. I actually spun wool yarn that was sold, professionally sold. I got so good at spinning and mixing colors that I was selling my yarn for good prices. But it's time consuming, and then I started moving, and so I got rid of the spinning wheel. So I missed that. But I don't have fond feelings of bunnies because I used to like had to like get their fiber, which is a task. But that would be interesting, having one that was tame. I didn't experience a tame one, so I don't know what they're like, but okay. So he's verbally abusive and he's controlling, and it's to the point I feel like everything's my fault. That happens a lot. They make everything's your fault. Now, here's a question for you, two boys mom. Do you know that it's not your fault? Are you able to tell the difference? So when he's accusing you of something, do you find yourself naturally assuming it? Because here's what we do. This is a great lead in. This is a really great lead in. There's two types of empathy that we have, that and one, victims learn that we shouldn't learn. We have to unlearn. I know I did it a lot. One is called imaginative others perspective. That's when you can put yourself in somebody else's perspective, but know that they're separate from you and know ultimately that the problem is theirs. When we get into these abusive relationships with toxic people, they don't have good self-soothing and they don't have impulse control or anger management. They don't know how to regulate their emotions. They ask us to do what's called imaginative self perspective. So they want us to take on their problem, their feelings, their experience, and solve it for them. They almost want us to mind read, get into their bodies, and fix things around them. And it becomes very easy for us to assume all this responsibility for what they're doing and feeling and what's happening in their life. My sense is, because based on what you just said to boy's mom, is that your partner, your ex, or your strange partner is asking you to take on all their inability, all their emotional dysregulation, all their cognitive dysregulation, all their lack of planning, their executive function problems, and to fix it. And when you don't fix it, you can't mind read perfectly or anticipate everything that possibly could go wrong. You're the problem. I bet you it happened to me. Then you're the problem. So the first step is to know that process is happening and begin to say to yourself, his problem or her problem is not my problem. And I know it's not just his, it's them. I mean, it could be him or her, because we have men who are struggling too. Their problem is not my problem. Even when they want me to make it my problem, that doesn't make it my problem. Now, that doesn't solve what you're going to do. I'm just saying psychologically, this is just a step you're going to take. So that's the first step, is you got to separate it in your head. That's their problem, not my problem. That's their. Now, you may say, I don't like living around their problem. I can't stand the losing the temper, the screaming at me, the threatening, that I don't want the kids seeing all of this. It's bad. That is a separate issue. And then you may start to think about, okay, so what of this can I need to sort of do something about, to sort of step in, because it's so dangerous for us all. Maybe some of it is I need to vacate the situation with my kids, like go out for the evening. If he's really losing it, go, yes, I know it may mean you come back to a trashed house. Yes, that's maybe the risk. But I want you to begin to, at least in your head, to start seeing that this is not you, this is the other person. And to get that little degree of separation, again, that helps break the trauma bond that we often so feel. I know it's really hard. This is a process, too, boys, mom. This is an incremental process of stepping out, stepping away psychologically. It's really hard. I know it's really hard. Like I said, if you didn't catch it at the beginning, we already feel like we're carrying a 100-pound weight, and somebody says, and now I want you to have free agency and take care of yourself better. Like, I can't pick up more weight. I can't do it. I'm barely surviving. I get that. That's why I'm saying it starts inside first. If you can start to make some of these small changes, the way you sort of see things, how you're dealing with it. It can help you get ready to get more, to do one of these other steps. It is definitely an incremental baby steps. I don't know if you guys ever saw the movie White About Bob, because I'm really dating myself, but I love that. It's all about baby steps, very much so. It's a process. Yeah, John, once we get out and once we get through the post-separation abuse and once we're really free, it is life. In fact, I was recently thinking about this because I dated a little bit this last fall and then it kind of fell apart at Christmas. My thought was, do I really even want to try again? Because this is the best I've ever felt. Being on my own is like, whew. And I really love not having the complication of another person. I may change my mind, but today it feels really good. Having that freedom feels awesome. So yes, there's hope. I guess that's what John and I are saying, is that there's hope. But even if you don't leave, there's still hope. You don't have to leave to have hope. I want you to know that. All these little things like I'm talking about with breaking a trauma bond, all of these things that you're taking back for yourself are ways of you slowly getting ready to protect yourself better. You know, not all of us have the privilege of getting out of a relationship. I know that's not popular to say on social media. I know that there's a lot of people who will be really not happy with me for saying it, but it's not always a choice that we have for lots of complicated reasons. For lots of complicated reasons. Yeah, and I agree. It is not your fault. I agree. Whoever said that, thank you so much for saying that. Yeah, what's a gray rock is cooking? Absolutely. It's not. You were sold something that was false. And we didn't know that. They're very good at that. They're predatory with that. They've practiced a lot before meeting you. They've practiced a lot. I'm letting go of it before I left him while I was saving up and building up the courage. Yeah, exactly. That's how I did it too. If to me it was, here, you want to be, okay, I'll be super vulnerably honest with all of you today. If it had not been my son's diagnosis of the cancer that brought me home, if it had not been a crisis that forced me to move, I mean, I was ready. I was ready for an out, but I didn't know how to make an out because mine was, I thought, really dangerous, actually. And those of you who know my story, you know the ending, that he is really a dangerous person. I felt true terror, and I waited for life to give me an out, and when life opened that door, I took it. So yeah, I understand that some of us feel like, I don't know how we're going to do it. So, but I would say, I think life is always working towards your advantage. Wait for an opening. If you're a believer or faith, pray about that. Pray for an opening. I was praying for an opening. And I do think that the universe, karma, God, something opens openings for us because, it wants us healthy. Life wants us healthy. So how do I tell if my abusive husband is a narcissist or borderline personality disorder? Ooh, yeah, that's really a tough question. They're close to each other, but not close, if that makes sense. I know anybody who has BPD here would say, no, I'm not like a narcissist at all. One of the big differences is that those with borderline personality disorder tends to have more empathy. They tend to be a little more, understanding of other people's positions, but they tend to be very dysregulated. So whatever upsets them, they're very reactive. Narcissists tend not to be as reactive. They're actually not as emotive as those with borderline personality disorders. They tend to be more constricted around their emotions, more flat, more. They tend to wield power, whereas borderline personality disorders tend to be more reactive. They tend to be like when life throws them a curve, then they either feel like they're falling apart, or they blow up into a big explosion and go into a rage. They're more fearful of abandonment, and they're very oriented to wanting to stay connected, very anxious around connection. Whereas narcissists, they're more anxious about control. They want to maintain control. They're definitely very, very close. I have a close family member that probably had more borderline. It was a male. And then I have a female in my life who's more narcissistic. Usually you think of it's the flip around, that they're opposite than that, but they're close. They're in the same family, which means they both are kind of antagonistic. Then there's those that have a mixed features. Like you definitely can have features of both. I don't know if you guys know that. So it doesn't mean yeah, exactly. They can have both. You can have somebody who has borderline features and narcissistic features. You might with a borderline dynamic, there's not a lot of entitlement. They don't think they're extra special. But with narcissists, they do tend to do that. I'd need to pull up the DSM-5 and look at the criteria. I talk so much about narcissism. I know the 9 off the top of my head, but I don't really know the criteria for the DSM-5 for the borderline. Although, I mean, I saw them both in my office. I treated both of them a lot. So, yeah. But I do have a test that's free, and so if you're welcome to take it. It's called "Am I the Narcissist?" But what you could do is take the test for your partner. Instead of you answering it about yourself, answer it about your partner, and that will help you get a better sense of what you've got. It doesn't really tell you questions for a borderline personality dynamic. I think the best way I know that I have somebody who's kind of borderline-ish is if I feel like life is like a yo-yo, like it's a tug pull. Like, I want you close to me. Don't be far away. You feel really distant to me. That makes me nervous. And then when you start to get too close, like, you're suffocating me. Why are you so close to me? You need to back off of me. You kind of feel this back, forth, back, forth, back, forth. Or if you do something that sort of threatens them, makes them feel like you might like leave them, or maybe you don't love them the way they want to be loved. Ooh, ooh. You'll feel like they'll either move into this like life has no purpose, meaning I might as well just go off and do something to myself, or they'll move into this rage of like, how can you do this and reject me, and I can't believe this. And usually the rage happens when they feel like you've wounded them, like you've somehow, you know, injured their self-esteem in some way. You'll see that rage. Now, not to say the narcissists aren't, they're very rageful, but they're more often, a lot of narcissists, not all of them, a lot of them are more cold and calculating. You know, a lot of you had a response to my video about time, how narcissists struggle with time. And you'll say, yeah, but they sure remember everything that I do. Yeah, but that's different. They don't remember the things that they're doing. You know, the minute they get done with whatever they're doing, it's gone. It's out of sight, out of mind. But with you, they see that as an offense. You've injured them. And so they hold on to it like a grudge. And sometimes they'll wait. And they may wait a long time to get you back. And they'll wait for just the right moment to nail you with whatever it is. Oh, thank you guys so much, to say, you're not all that. Remember that time when blah, blah, blah. So don't mistake that as not having an issue with time. Oh, they still have an issue with time. It's just that they're very good with being vengeful and weaponizing your mistakes. They'll weaponize your mistakes. Yeah. So, Muriel, that's interesting. Your therapist wants you to revive the old me. You haven't let me know how that appointment goes. How, you remember you had that appointment? You were like saying, I don't know if I should continue on with this therapist. I'd love to hear how that went. Even if you want to just tell me offline, I'd love to hear that. But they want you to revive the old me. I would say no. I don't think you can revive the old you. The old you was sort of innocent and trusting, and maybe even sometimes too trusting. The old you probably believed that everybody in the world was good, and now you know that's not true. So I'm not for sure that's a wise thing. I think that you should find a new you know, a you that's knows what you know today, but also is free to be you, kind of lets you be you. So yeah, I agree with you. I think that finding the new you is a really good thing, and that it's not necessarily a bad thing. Nina Blay, thank you so much for the gifts. I'm just blown away by how much you're giving me today. Really, really appreciate it. Normally, sometimes I'll go a whole live and I'll have no gifts, no gifts at all. What do you plan to tell the kids? Yeah, that's a great question, Kate. What is, I don't know who you're talking about, or what you guys have been talking about, what issues, but oh, thank you so much about the live. And yeah, I appreciate that so much. How do you decide when you're ready to date again? That's a great question. Well, you're not going to be completely 100% healed. I want to warn you on that. Don't look for that. That's not going to happen. But I do think you should have some healing done. So I do think it's important that you've gotten some coaching, you joined a group, maybe you've reached out to other survivors, you're here on these lives, you're reading books. I think it's really helpful to understand what you went through, how it's affected you, how it's made you anxious. I think the other thing to really be aware of is how it makes you feel about being in a relationship. Like, are you feeling like you now have trust issues? What's going to be triggers for you? Like for me, one of them is Rose book is a good book. One of the triggers for me is when someone uses their phone in a weird way and they're texting in an odd way. You know, like they'll text and then throw it down upside down, like they're keeping it hidden. that triggers me because I wonder what are they hiding. Now, interestingly enough, the few dates I've had, gone out with people, they have been like casual with their phone. I mean, no big, they'll be like thumb through the photos in front of me, you know. That makes me feel so much better when I see it. But know what the triggers are going to be for you. I think the other thing is be really honest about what you're ready for. This is what I'm seeing when the people I'm dating that I can tell are not healed. They think they want a relationship and they're not ready. And they really actually don't want a relationship. They just don't want to be alone. So they move into these relationships saying, I want a relationship. And then the minute you start to get close or it feels like it might be really a good thing, they're backing up and they're disappearing. So be honest about what you're really ready for and then say it. Like, hey, I just want to meet people right now, or I really want a relationship, you know, but say it out loud. Be very clear about that so you don't hurt other people when you start to meet them. I think the red flags, remember the red flags is a lot of things can be red flags and it doesn't always make them a red flag because sometimes it's just anxiousness. You know, sometimes you need to give people time to see what's going to happen. But here's the thing I've really found that's super important to me that I found as I've tried to date that I find critical. Don't excuse behavior that makes you feel uncomfortable. Maybe somebody else it wouldn't bother them, but if you feel less than or you feel diminished or devalued, don't underestimate that. I'll give you an example. I was seeing somebody for 2 months in this fall, and he periodically would get moody with me, like treat our time like I was asking too much from him. And I didn't know why, because he's the one that set up the date. He even set up the parameters of the date. He even set up how long the date was going. And then he's acting irritated like I was wanting too much from him. That to me told me this guy was not ready for a relationship. My gut told me this is a person who's had a lot of problematic relationships, and he finds sharing time, sharing commitment scary. He's not really ready to do this. And so he's going to treat you like you're the problem when you're not the problem. So that for me was, I saw that and I thought, and you know, I at first, you know, I should have listened to it more. So that I walked away from it after it ended, realizing that if it doesn't feel good to me and I don't feel like I can be fully myself, it doesn't even mean the other person's bad. It just means it may not be the right connection for you. So I think that's one of the big things that I walked away from that really was really important to me. Yeah, it does seem that a lot of narcissists do cheat. Not all of them. I don't think all 100% cheating. I know people love to say that they do. They don't all cheat. I can name narcissists off my hand that I personally knew who did not cheat. They're very narcissistic, but they never cheated. So don't make that a stipulation of thinking, oh, they all cheat. No, they don't all cheat. Meet a loyal one. It doesn't make them not a narcissist, though. So be very, very careful about that. Are they able to center other people? No, none of them center other people. I would say that's 100% across the board. But I wouldn't. They don't all cheat. And I do agree. It is not your job to comfort them. I know that people talk about co-regulating. People who have cluster B who are talking about co-regulation are really actually, they're using that, they're first of all, they're twisting the concept, because nobody ever is going to crawl into your body like you're an infant and make you feel better. That's just not going to happen. Not going to happen. You're an adult. You're expected to handle and regulate your own emotions. Co-regulation is, it's a concept actually that comes out of literature with infants and mothers. So what they found was when a mother starts to soothe the infant and loves, that the infant's body neurology begins to regulate, the temperature improves, digestion's better, that there's actually an impact that the mother has on the infant. Now there's the idea that you can be adults and you can co-regulate, like cuddles and hugs and stuff that, you know, like us being around animals. They found us, when we have an animal in our life, our blood pressure goes down. That's a bit of co-regulation right there. But some are distorting this and saying, when I'm upset, it's your job to comfort me. No, you're not a baby. You're an adult. You have to comfort yourself. Now, can it be helpful to have your partner, your loved one around you and say, hey, I'm here, I get it? Yeah, that's great, but it's not the other person's job to make you feel better, to make the bad feeling go away. You have to master that yourself. And I actually have had people who have NPD who get into my comments and say, well, you're not helping me heal. Well, it's not my job to help you heal. That's your job. You're not going to make me feel guilty for not taking on your emotional problems. So yeah. All right. Any last questions? Because we're gonna wrap it up for the day. Thank you so much for being here. I always love seeing like RWD channel here. Muriel, Vadi, you're new. I've not seen you before. Maria, thank you so much. Tasha, I love having you here. Kate, thank you so much. I know you're modding for me. I also see so many people on TikTok. John, I think you're new. I'm not for sure. Yeah, you just followed me. Thank you so much for that. Two Boys Mom, I don't think I've met you before. And I know Gray Rock, the long name with Gray Rock. I know you know, I know each other and been around. Destiny, thank you so much for being here with me. Nina, I think you're a new one too. I try to remember you guys so that I recognize it when you come back. How long did it take you to speak about the truth? I'm 2 years in and I'm still silent. Lauren, what helped me was, okay, I didn't finish this story. So I'll finish this story and then wrap it up. So when I started writing Love You More, I'll show you guys that book one more time. When I started writing Love You More, which is a memoir, but I write it like a novel, I came across a book called Your Life is Story. That's what I came across a book called Your Life is Story. And in it, the author said, and I think it's Christine Raynar said, put a Post-it note on your computer and it says, write what you dare not say. Write what you dare not say. I did that. I literally wrote it and stuck it to my computer. And then when I'd start to feel terror about what I wanted to say, that it felt too scary, too big, too shameful, I would see that little Post-it and say, do what you dare not say. And then I would write it. And I realized this, whatever I wrote, I never had to share with anybody in the whole world. It was mine, but at least gave me the courage to get it out. And that was the first step for me to break my silence. It really, really helped. So something you might want to try is writing your story. Whether or not you decide to do anything or anyone ever sees it, you know. Oh, Astrid from Australia. So lovely to have you here. All right, you guys, you've been amazing. I love this. I'll be back here next Tuesday to hang out with you. I always announce the topics the day before on Facebook as well as YouTube. So if you'd like to know what am I going to be talking about, you can find out the day ahead. I'm trying to think. I am following my podcast topics. So next week, I already know what it is. So I can tell you. Next week is going to be on why we can't see a bad relationship when it's bad. What happens inside of us that creates the confusion? You know, maybe it's our cultural upbringing. Maybe it's our religious faith. Maybe it's about our own sense of ourself and how we relate to people and our belief about our future. But we're going to be talking about that. That's the topic on the podcast. Ro is going to be on the podcast. The podcast name is called Breaking Free from Narcissistic Abuse. Breaking Free from Narcissistic Abuse. So that's what we'll be talking about next week. And I hope to see you guys all back here and we'll do that. All right. Thank guys. I appreciate you so much. Bye-bye.